Evening all. Let me just pull this a bit closer to me. Give me a sec. How are we all doing? You can tell by there's a bit of a chill in the air in the workshop tonight. So, before we go into too much detail, I haven't been in the workshop for 4 days now, I think. Lost my motivation a little bit. I don't know if it's because there's so much to do in a short space of time to get ready for this open day, or it's winter blues or whatever. I'm fed up of it being cold and miserable. So tonight I thought, right, get out, get motivated, get out in the workshop and get on with a bit more progress on the engine. Or try to anyway. So before I go into bits and bobs that I've made, we're going to go now and we'll do a fly through of the engine and tender, and I'll just talk through what we've got, what progress has happened around the engine at the minute. So we'll go and do that now, and then I'll show you with little bits and bobs that I've been making. Okay, starting at the front end, see the outriggers there for the outer foot plating. Horizontal stretcher and vertical stretcher bolted together, and then the stretcher for in front of the firebox, or what will be in front of the firebox. The back end's had a few bits taken off it, so I can work on it, and then over onto the tender frames. Tender frames just got the 2 brake hangers that are just sat on the inside left there, and then tender wheels are over on the back bench. They're ready to get put in pretty much. So as I say, the back end of the engine's just looks quite bare now. I've taken loads of bits off it. You can see the horn guides on the front of the bench there ready for me to do. Those 2 stretchers, just see underneath that horizontal stretcher the radial stretcher I've been talking about, and then the front drag box and front foot plating. Everything's just loosely put in at the moment, nothing's bolted in fully. And then the buffer beam, it's all looking very nice at the front end. Not far off now. So there you go, quite a bit going on. Concentrating on those, I don't know if you saw it in that flyover, I didn't quite zoom in on them enough. If I can just get one out of the frames to show you. Working on the spring hangers at the minute, brake hangers, sorry, at the minute for the tender. So the backs have been skimmed off. There's 1 rivet hole been put in, and then the hole for the actual pin, the pivot pin there. Now these are an awkward little thing to machine, as you can tell by the shape of them. You'd think you just clamp it in your vise on your milling machine to skim that top off. I didn't do it that way. These have, let me find a packet of them, and this will help any of those out there that are doing a BR standard tender and are using Michael Jack's or Adam Crow's scales brake hangers. They have a chucking spigot on the back there, and that allows you to rotate it in the lathe dead centre to where that pin needs to be there. One thing you need to be careful of, and I found this out on the first one I did, is that will try and bend inwards. When you start to press the centre in the end of there, it'll try and bend that inwards. Yeah, so what you have to do is to get a piece of material that's sitting there, and what I do is I put an elastic band over the top of it at the back, around the top there, and it basically stops that from squashing and going out of alignment. Once you've got that hole through into that bit of material that's behind it, you can take it off, because then you're into the actual meat of the bracket there, and you can then follow that centre, that drill line all the way through until you get into the chunk of it there. Now these are 3 scale, so these are a 3/16 pin, not a quarter pin, but then it's quarter diameter when it's in the chunk of it there, but I'm going to counterbore it from the back. So down that hole at the back, I'm going to counterbore through there to open that out. I think it's 5/16 in there, not a quarter. So I need to open that up, but I need to open it up a quarter in depth. So that's when the milling machine is going to come in handy. so I can send that counterboard down, open that up a little bit to get that pin, because the pin drops through. And what I've seen on full-size engines, the pin that comes through from the outside, so the frames are here, comes through from the outside, excuse me, my nose is running, comes through from the outside of the frames, through the frames, and then it sits in this as the whole casting, and obviously the pin comes through, the brake hanger will be here, and then the tip of the pin will come through with a split pin in it. And I'll put a picture on in this top corner just so you can see one with the brake hanger on it. I can't remember where I got the picture from, but someone sent me it, so thanks to them, because that helps me with reference for these. These are a common thing on all BR standard tenders. So because you're drilling through the meat of it, you're going to actually be drilling into this chucking spigot. So what I tend to do is I measure from the front of there all the way to the back, go into that enough so that when that gets cut off, I just hacksaw it off, there'll be a hole, basically. Once that comes off, there'll be a hole, said hole. That allows me then, I'll then put it onto a little mandrel, and it allows me to skim the back of it there and skim that down to thickness. Once we've got it to that stage, I can put that top hole in it, then it's ready to go into the frames. I haven't drilled these other two here, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to align that in the frames with a brake pin, the pivot pin. Once it's aligned in the frames, I can use the frames then to drill the other two holes. That makes sense? So I'm only doing one hole at the minute. I'm going to get them all to the same stage, then the tender frames are going to get stripped down, the other two holes will get drilled, all the other bits and bobs that I've got to drill when the frames are apart can be done all at the same time. And then that's ready for riveting on with any other bits that are ready to be riveted on. So that's what I'm doing with those. And the other little bit I've been working on, now I put a plea out about scale checker plate or diamond plate. I don't know if you can see that. I'll try and bounce the light off it so you can see it, get it a bit closer. We call that diamond plate. Now I'll put a picture on of the full-size engine. I don't know for a fact that that shape, that diamond plate, is correct to how engines were built back in 1950 odd. They might have been built on checker plate, which is a different pattern to that. Scale checker plate, as some of you may know, is quite hard to find, so I'm going to do it with the diamond plate because that's the only picture reference I've got. Whether it's right or wrong, who knows. So I'm going to work with that, and what I've been doing as well, I've been fiddling about. You might have seen it on the little short that I put on YouTube of the full plate hinges. Now these started off life as a laser cut fret. You can see that 16th holes in them. I drew them up really pretty much from pictures. I didn't have a scale to go on. And what I do to get those to work like that, I got some 332 diameter rod and I put a hole straight through it. Now you think 332 rod's bloody small, and you can see that that's bloody small, by the size of my fat fingers. So I put a hole straight through it and silver soldered it onto the ends of two of them hinge plates there. Silver soldered it onto the end, filed out the middle of one bit and the two ends out of the other bit, put the two halves together and pushed a, I think it's about 1mm stainless steel pin through them, and then just tapped, riveted over the ends. I've got 4 of those to make. That's the first one. They work out bang on, they look perfect. They all end up being riveted to this plate somewhere up there like that. And I say somewhere up there because again I haven't got any reference pictures, so it's going to sit up on there Let me bring it, without knocking everything and banging everything, bring it closer to the camera. So you can see there, look, it's going to sit right at the very top there. See this channel, that's what the foot plate sits in. So it's going to sit up there, and that'll create the pivot then for the full plate. The full plate is in two halves, so there's one half over there and another half over here. So it allows both plates to move in up and down independently when the engine's moving. For those that don't know what a full plate is, it is basically it's like a convexed plate that sits between your engine frames and your tender frames. They tend to, in our scale, let me move this a bit again, they tend to, in 7 1/4, 5 inch stuff like that, they tend to get omitted altogether off drawings and stuff. I don't know why, because to me it kind of finishes that look between the engine and the tender. And it's a plate that the foot plate crew can stand on without falling down the gap, obviously. They're omitted in our scales, I think, because we don't stand on the foot plates essentially, so why bother making the effort to do it? Obviously we're trying to copy what we see with a big engine, so I'm adding that detail in. I like them on scale models because it, as I say, it finishes off that look of an engine. You want your foot plate to look nice and neat. It doesn't look nice and neat if there's a bloody great gap between your engine and your tender. So that's why I'm copying it, just to give it that finishing touch on the foot plate. So moving on from there, I don't know if I've shown you this. There's the front draw hook. It's a bloody great long piece. This has still got to go into the 4-jaw chuck on the lathe and have this end turned down for the washers and bumpers like I was talking about in a previous video. So that's got to be turned down there and a thread put on the end ready for the nut to go on. Then this will all get nicely run round in the linisher to take all the sharp edges off it, to give it some shape, to make it look like the real thing. I'll also radius inside that edge there. I'll put a countersink both sides of the actual hole for where the chain goes, or for this be a 3-link coupling, screw coupling, sorry. That'll drop in there, but if it left with sharp edges, if you ever used it, it would actually snap it, because that's quite a sharp edge from the laser cutter. So that'll all get shaped in there, and then that's ready to fit on. You'll notice in that overview there's quite a bit gone on at the front end. There's some outriggers gone on, you can just see them in view there. There's some outriggers gone on for the outer foot plate. Obviously the drag box at the front is loosely bolted in. I'm not doing much more at that front end for now, because as I say, I've got the buffers, stocks and everything to do at the front end. The rubbing plate, I've had to order another one because, as I said, I lost one. I don't know how I could lose something in this workshop. Well, I do know I can lose something in this workshop because I don't put anything away. But I've lost it in the workshop somewhere, I don't know where. So I just asked Ed if he can cut me another one in the next batch of cutting, so I can then put that in the milling machine and start machining that up. So that's got to go onto the front buffer beam. And then I've got all the horn guides now. I've got all the castings for them. So before I start machining them, I'll just grab one. Before I start machining these up, on the Dick Stockings drawings, you have a reference to put the holes in that casting, but it doesn't give you any reference to that size there. It just says where your holes need to be in this bit here, and you've got to kind of do a bit of working out and stuff like that. Because I have copied full size with the engine frames, the horn guides themselves, I've got to measure the raw casting first and then plumb in the dimensions from what I've had laser cut so that I can drill them. When I did it for the tender frames, I had if you remember, I don't know if I've still got it to hand, I have. I had a drilling jig cut, so I could drill the horn guides on the tender before they were bolted on, but I didn't have the holes laser cut in the frames, because I'm going to do the transfer from the horn guides, because they're on the outside, through into the frames. These are riveted on from the inside of the frames and are flush on the outside. So there's a bit of thought process got to go on with them before I start machining them. I'm waiting on the driving set, the centre set still. They're being cast at the moment. And then, I don't know if you saw in the overview video, or you might have seen the post, can't remember where I shared it, the actual radial pivot stretcher that I was talking about, that's gone into the frames. It's not bolted in yet, it's just loosely put in. Excuse me, still getting over the remnants of this cold. It's loosely placed in at the moment. It sits down below the horizontal stretcher that's in the frames. So that bit's done, and I'm happy with that. That's all gone and silver soldered together nicely. My next fabrication, apart from working on the back end and the rear drag box, my next fabrication I've got to start doing or looking at is for the, what do we call it? My brain's gone blank. There's two outriggers for the, what the hell do I call them? Anyway, reversing arm links, brackets, reversing, yeah. So anyway, where the reversing links are going to be, or the radial link, there's two brackets that sit on the outside. Now, again, the Dick Stockings drawings had one drawing of it. I've done a lot of research, and the Dick Stockings one looks nothing like how it should do. Plus, as well, he had it bolted to a plate bolted just in front of it for the motion brackets. And because I've got to that part of the frames that I need to look at, my cylinders, as you know, lost pattern. So my cylinders, again, I keep referring back to the Dick Stockings runs because I have to. The cylinder pattern that I had at the time mounted, it would have mounted the cylinders onto a plate to give it the look of how the full size engine was. So because of that spacing off by 1/8 of an inch, although we can't get 1/8 plate anymore in that size, it'll be 4mm plate, or 3mm plate. I've got to take that into consideration, because the measurements go from obviously the centre of the engine outwards. So where everything should sit, the motion brackets, the cylinders, the reversing brackets and everything like that, I've got to take that into consideration in those measurements. I don't want to make up the brackets and everything like that and have all the reversing rods and everything and have all that kind of part of the motion, be thinking about it going, okay, I'll just do it to the Dick Stockings drawings because that reference is the same, that reference is the same, and so on and so forth. If the width isn't right, all that is scrap. So I'm going way ahead in my drawings to do something, you know, that's going to kind of be essentially just bolted onto the frames. But I have to think about it now, even though we're only at this stage of bare frames, no wheels or anything like that, because it'll all have a knock-on effect. And I don't want to have it on its wheels and then me start thinking about putting motion brackets and stuff like that on and finding that the reference points, the centre lines are off, if that makes sense. So lots going on. What I might do is, once I've started getting the horn guides all riveted in, and I can get the reference point for those reversing brackets. My motion brackets, because I've got that casting, I want to use them, so I need to make some sort of fitment for them. I've seen what the full size look like, and it is a bigger style of casting. It has a big back piece to it that mounts it to the frames, obviously stops it from twisting in any way or shape or form. I know what it's going to look like, so I need to take that into account when I'm going to mount my motion brackets. The holes are there in the frames ready for it all, so me being able to make some sort of fabrication for the back of the motion brackets should be a lot simpler. So that brings us all up to date. I think it does at the moment. I haven't done any building videos or silver soldier or anything like that, because I just kind of want to get cracked on with stuff now. So that's why I'm going back to doing these update videos. I know it's a bit boring, I understand that, because the silver soldering videos have been handy for people to see how other people use it, how other people do it, or how I do it. Not to say everybody does it like that, but if it works and it helps you, then so be it. So I'll be doing an update again in another couple of weeks' time. Hopefully the tender itself should be signs of showing that it's going to be on its wheels. Fingers crossed. I think we're going to see the end of this cold weather very soon, which will be another bonus, because then it won't be as bloody cold in here, and I won't be suffering as much, and we can get some progress done. I'm trying to get a lot of drawings done at the minute for other people as well, but as I say, I haven't been in the workshop, haven't been on my laptop, just been done a little bit here and there, just to try and keep the ball rolling without losing my mojo. Anyway, signing off for now. Don't forget to like, subscribe and share and things like that, and yeah, we'll keep some content coming. One thing I will warn you about though is what's under that blanket there. That's the home side, my dad's engine. That is going to come out of hibernation, because I want to get that tested and everything, and I know I've got to do something with the regulator, because the last time I steamed it, the regulator wasn't playing very well, so I'm going to have to take the dome off it and stuff like that. I'll probably film it, because it has got a ball valve. I fitted a ball valve in it, in the regulator, instead of doing it to the home side drawings. So if you're interested, keep tuning into my channel and we'll digest what's gone on in there. I think I know what's wrong, and it was me in my infancy of working on that engine. So yeah, keep an eye out for that one, and we'll see you all soon. Ta-da!